Water is vital for human life. The UN recognizes human accessibility to water as a fundamental human right. However, as a common pool resource, it is rivalrous and at times abused. Water holds a great cultural importance for many First Nations. Thus, the relationship between water and First Nations is complex.
First Nation access to water issues can be examined by looking at 3 case studies: Six Nations of the Grand River, Oneida Nation of the Thames, and Mississauga of the New Credit. All 3 of these First Nations are located in southern Ontario and are part of the Grand River and Thames River watersheds.
Six Nations and Oneida share similar cultural views of water. Water is a connection to all of our mothers, the earth. Six Nations Reserve is home to 13,000 people. Oneida has 2,000. Both are supplied by surface water and groundwater. Six Nations is located downstream of the city of Brantford and gets surface water from the Grand River. Oneida is located downstream of London and gets surface water from the Thames River. Six Nations and Oneida have on-reserve treatment facilities and local water distribution networks. Both serve close to 90% of residents with water from the treatment facility. The First Nations are responsible for the operation and maintenance of the facilities as per federal water regulations, but are funded by the Aboriginal Affairs and Northern Development Canada.
New Credit First Nations consider water as one of the 4 elements believed to connect the circle of life. New Credit is home to 820 people. They are serviced by groundwater and surface water from Lake Erie. New Credit receives water piped in from the City of Nanticoke Treatment Facility. Unlike Six Nations and Oneida, the nation is only responsible for the operation and maintenance of the distribution network that is on the reserve. The treatment facility is operated by the Ontario Clean Water Agency and funded by the City of Nanticoke.
Based on interviews completed between 2013 and 2014, Oneida had the largest number of respondents that reported having current boil water advisories at 61%. New Credit was the lowest at 8%. When asked about their current water service satisfaction, New Credit reported the highest level of satisfaction at 3.8 out of 5. New Credit reported the lowest current cultural significance of water, even though it plays an important role in many traditional ceremonies.
The main contributing factors to drinking water quality in Six Nations are that there are few zoning bylaws that intervene in land uses impacting water or that control land and water use on the reserve. Many community members feel as though they do not need bylaws because traditional knowledge has instilled attitudes in them to protect the land. Planning processes are often stalled due to internal tensions between chief, councils, and citizen groups that leads to temporary solutions that do not meet community needs long term. Due to the history of contamination, many community members do not trust water sources, and it is really challenging to rebuild that trust. A lack of transparency when monitoring known sources of contamination leads to a lack of trust in the accuracy and monitoring of water quality.
The main contributing factors to drinking water quality in Oneida Nation include a relocation to land along the Thames River after they never received land promised to them for serving in the American Revolution. The federal government replaced the traditional government systems with elected chief and councils that govern the community today. There is no clear authority defining who can make decisions to ensure safe drinking water within the community, weakening land use control and increasing the risk of on and off reserve water source contamination. The close proximity to landfills downstream of London fuels mistrust about the quality of water on reserve, so many rely on bottled water instead of community treated water. As well, Oneida is unable to monitor drinking water to fully meet the needs of its members or communicate clear, widespread drinking water advisories.
The main contributing factors to drinking water quality in New Credit stem from the fact that they were involved in historical land treaties and purchase agreements which eventually forced them to move their settlement on the Credit River. There are few bylaws related to water treatment and few enforceable regulations to assure that potential contaminants are treated before entering the environment. There is inadequate federal government funding to provide safe drinking water and delivery of services on reserve, so not all members of the community can be serviced by the water distribution network. There is very few bylaws that regulate on-reserve infrastructure such as well and septic tanks, and an unwillingness of community members to allow health representatives on their property to monitor water resources. New Credit also suffers from challenges to communicate clear and widespread drinking water advisories.
So what do we know now? We know that New Credit, the community that had the least water advisories, also reported the highest drinking water system satisfaction. It is also the community that receives treated water from a treatment facility off reserve. The cultural importance of water is low in New Credit. Loss of connection to place influences the water management, development of policies, and governance of the resource. The federal government is working to provide funding to build treatment facilities on reserve where a nearby infrastructure is not suitable to support the communities. However, the federal funding for operation and maintenance, as well as how water quality guidelines are followed, is insufficient. First Nation communities supplied by on-reserve water treatment facilities do not benefit from the same level of water quality. In 2013, the government passed the Safe Drinking Water for First Nations Act that allows the government to enter into agreements with non-First Nation enforcement agencies to administer and enforce the regulations of the Act to ensure safe drinking water quality.
These case studies reveal similarities. The elected council and all three communities are not optimally addressing community concerns. Sweeping bureaucratic structural barriers imposed by the federal government have resulted in the tendency for the First Nation communities to have little voice in how to deal with their own environmental and water-related issues. It leaves you to question, to what extent can traditional council exert the will of their citizens on the federal government?